When a manipulator thinks you won't do anything, that's when they seal their own regret. They don't start by going too far. They start by testing how much you'll tolerate. A comment that crosses the line just enough. A boundary pushed with a smile. A favor taken for granted. They're not trying to hurt you yet. They're trying to measure you. Manipulators operate on assumptions. That you'll explain yourself. That you'll smooth things over. That you'll absorb discomfort to keep the peace. Underestimation is their favorite shortcut. They mistake patience for weakness, calm for compliance, silence for confusion. And that's where the shift begins. Because you're not quiet due to uncertainty. You're quiet because you're watching. While they grow comfortable, you're collecting patterns. What they say when challenged lightly. How they respond to resistance. Where their tone sharpens when they feel entitled. They think the interaction is casual. You recognize it as diagnostic. This is the part most people miss. Regret doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from allowing the manipulator to believe the wrong story about you. They believe you need harmony. They believe you need approval. They believe you need them. So they escalate with confidence. And every escalation makes the mistake larger. They reveal how they justify behavior. They reveal what they feel entitled to. They reveal where they assume you won't push back. Underestimation creates exposure. By the time they realize something is off, it's already too late. They've said too much. Pushed too far. Shown you exactly how they operate when they think they're safe. This is where power quietly changes hands. Not because you attacked, not because you warned them, but because you let them believe their illusion a little longer than they should have. Manipulators don't regret hurting people. They regret miscalculating. And the moment they underestimate you is the moment regret becomes inevitable. In the next chapter, we'll break down why they assume you'll tolerate it in the first place, and how that assumption becomes the pressure point you use against them. When the narcissist pushes a boundary, it's because they believe you won't enforce it. Not because they're bold, but because they're comfortable. Manipulators don't start by taking everything. They start by taking a little and watching what happens. A disrespectful comment that's brushed off. A demand disguised as a favor. An assumption slipped into conversation as if it's already been agreed to. They're not careless. They're calibrating. They're looking for friction. And when there is none, they draw a conclusion. They decide you value peace more than self-respect. They decide you'd rather explain yourself than disrupt the dynamic. They decide discomfort is something you'll quietly carry instead of handing back. That decision is where regret begins, because tolerance teaches manipulators how far they can go. Every unchallenged move becomes precedent. Every swallowed reaction becomes permission. They don't see kindness. They see capacity. Capacity to absorb. Capacity to excuse. Capacity to stay. This is why manipulators repeat behaviors that already worked. Not because they're malicious at first, but because the system rewarded them. And once a manipulator believes you'll tolerate something, they stop disguising it. The tone sharpens. The entitlement grows. The misunderstandings become routine. What they don't realize is that tolerance is not agreement, and silence is not surrender. While they're mistaking your restraint for weakness, you're making an assessment. You're noticing how quickly they push when they feel safe. How casually they cross lines when there's no immediate consequence. How confident they become when they think the cost is zero. That information is invaluable because regret doesn't come from sudden retaliation. It comes from delayed consequence. The manipulator believes the dynamic is stable. They believe the pattern is locked in. They believe they've learned who you are. That belief makes them sloppy. And sloppy manipulators expose exactly where pressure works best. They don't regret mistreating people. They regret discovering it too late that tolerance had an expiration date. In the next chapter, we'll break down the specific mistake they make that hands you leverage, and why once that mistake is made, the outcome is no longer in their control. When the narcissist thinks they've secured you, they stop being careful. That's the mistake. Manipulators rely on uncertainty, on the idea that you're still weighing options, still deciding, still hoping things improve. The moment they believe you're locked in, their behavior changes. They speak more freely. They assume more. They reveal preferences they used to hide. They start saying things like, "You know how I am," or "You're not really going anywhere," or "You always come around." These aren't slips. They're confirmations. It's the point where manipulation shifts from testing to ownership. And ownership creates leverage, because once someone believes you're staying, they stop managing impressions. They stop masking intent. They stop pacing themselves. They think the game is over. That's when they expose what actually matters to them. Control points emerge. Who they answer to. What they can't afford to lose. Where their confidence thins when questioned. This is where most people panic or confront. They feel the disrespect sharpen and want to address it immediately. That's how leverage gets wasted. Leverage isn't created by reaction. It's created by asymmetry. You know something they don't. They think the position is secure. You know it's temporary. They believe the rules favor them. You see the flaw in the structure. This is why the dark patient response works. You don't correct them. You don't warn them. You let them continue. Because the more comfortable they get, the more committed they become to the wrong assumptions. They start stacking behavior on top of behavior, escalation on top of escalation. Each one makes withdrawal harder for them, and cleaner for you. They believe leverage means having options. In reality, leverage means knowing when someone has none. The manipulator doesn't realize they've crossed that threshold until after it's too late. They've said too much, revealed too much, relied on you too much. And once leverage exists, you don't need to rush. Because the end is no longer emotional, it's mechanical. In the next chapter, we'll break down why reacting too early ruins leverage and why the most devastating move is the one you don't make yet. When a manipulator crosses the line, reacting immediately feels powerful, but it's the fastest way to lose leverage. Reaction is what they're counting on. They expect anger. They expect confrontation. They expect you to explain why something hurt you. Because explanation puts you back into their frame. The moment you react, the dynamic becomes emotional instead of strategic. They shift the conversation. They minimize. They justify. They reframe. And suddenly, you're no longer dealing with behavior. You're defending your perception of it. That's why manipulators provoke reactions early. It gives them control over timing. But you're not here to win arguments. You're here to make them regret it. And regret requires patience. When you don't react, something unsettling happens. They don't get feedback. No confirmation they went too far. No reassurance they're still safe. No signal telling them how to adjust. So they wait. And waiting makes manipulators uncomfortable. They replay what they said. They wonder if it landed. They start scanning your behavior for clues. This is where pressure quietly shifts, because now they're thinking about you, instead of you thinking about them. Non-reaction forces them to fill the silence themselves, and manipulators are terrible at silence. They talk themselves into escalation. They convince themselves they need to push again. They rationalize one more move to clear things up, and each move digs the hole deeper. This is why restraint is devastating. You're not being passive. You're letting them commit. They reveal how they justify themselves when unchecked. They show what they believe they're entitled to without resistance. They expose how far they'll go when they think there's no cost. Reacting early stops that process. Waiting lets it complete. By the time you do respond, and if you ever do, the context has shifted completely. They're no longer testing you. They're explaining themselves. An explanation is weakness. In the next chapter, we'll break down how letting them escalate on their own multiplies the regret, and why the most embarrassing losses are always self-inflicted. When a manipulator doesn't get the reaction they wanted, they don't stop. They escalate. They always do. Silence doesn't calm them. It unsettles them. Because escalation isn't about anger. It's about reassurance. They need confirmation that they still have access, that their pressure still works, that you're still adjustable. So when you don't react, they push again. The tone tightens. The tactics shift. The behavior becomes harder to defend. What they think is persistence is actually exposure. Every escalation removes subtlety. Every escalation adds urgency. Every escalation leaves fingerprints. They start contradicting themselves. They over-explain motives that weren't questioned. They justify actions no one challenged. This is where regret quietly compounds, because escalation commits them to a story they can't walk back from. They stack behavior on top of behavior, entitlement on top of assumption, pressure on top of pressure, and they don't realize what they're doing. They believe they're regaining control. In reality, they're narrowing their exit. This is the phase where you do nothing deliberately. You let them show how far they'll go when unchecked. You let them reveal what they believe they deserve. You let them confirm that restraint was never mutual. By the time they stop escalating, the damage is already done. Not to you, to them. Because now when the consequence finally lands, it won't look emotional. It won't look reactive. It will look justified. This is the difference between retaliation and inevitability. And if this way of thinking resonates with you, if you've ever felt the shift when you stopped reacting and started observing, consider subscribing to the Silent Regime channel. It's where we break down manipulation, control and power without theatrics, where silence is treated as strategy, and where walking away isn't weakness, it's leverage. This isn't about becoming cruel. It's about becoming untouchable. In the next chapter, we'll break down how to choose the one strike that actually matters, and why everything before it was preparation. When you finally decide to take action against the narcissist, the worst thing you can do is make it loud. Loud strikes feel satisfying. They also give manipulators something to fight. Arguments give them angles. Explanations give them material. Emotion gives them ammunition. That's why the strike that makes them regret it is never dramatic. It's selective. By now you've seen enough. You know where their confidence is fake. You know what they rely on to feel secure. You know which assumption keeps the whole structure standing. The mistake most people make is trying to hit everything. The right move hits one thing. Not their pride, not their reputation, not their story, their access. Manipulators don't fear confrontation. They fear being rendered irrelevant. So the strike is simple, quiet, and surgical. You remove yourself from the role they were using. You withdraw the cooperation they assumed was permanent. You enforce a boundary without explaining why it exists. This is what makes it sting. There's no argument to win, no accusation to deny, no emotion to manage. Just a change in reality. They realize too late that the thing they depended on is no longer available. And there's no discussion to reopen it. This is where regret crystallizes, because they can't spin it. They can't escalate against it. They can't negotiate their way back in. They're left with a single humiliating realization. They pushed until the position disappeared. And the more they replay it, the clearer it becomes. One move did all of this. One decision, one withdrawal. Not because you attacked them, but because you stopped participating. This is why the strike only works once. You don't repeat it. You don't clarify it. You don't follow up. You let the absence speak. And in that absence, they understand something they hate admitting. They weren't overpowered. They weren't betrayed. They weren't blindsided. They were cut off. Cleanly. Finally. In the next chapter, we'll break down why hitting where they can't defend forces an embarrassing retreat, and why once that retreat happens, the balance of power never resets. When the strike lands where they can't respond, the game ends immediately. Narcissists are trained for conflict. They expect accusations. They expect emotion. They expect noise. What they are not prepared for is a move that removes the board. Defensibility is their lifeline. As long as they can argue, explain, or reframe, they believe they still have control. So the most devastating strike is the one that offers no surface, no claim to deny, no insult to counter, no story to rewrite, just a boundary enforced without dialogue. This is why access is the pressure point they can't protect. They can defend their image. They can defend their intentions. They can defend their version of events. They cannot defend absence. When you stop engaging, something humiliating happens. They're forced to react without a target. They try to justify themselves to people who didn't ask. They rehearse arguments that no one hears. They look for ways to re-enter a dynamic that no longer exists. And each attempt exposes the imbalance. Because defense requires an opponent, and you're gone. This is where embarrassment sets in. Not public embarrassment. Internal. They realize they're responding to a move that didn't involve them. That the decision was made without negotiation. That the outcome didn't require their agreement. That realization is brutal. They want to explain. They want to correct. They want to reassert relevance. But there's nothing to push against. Every tactic they know requires engagement. Every tool they have assumes access. And access is gone. This is why manipulators retreat quietly after this point. They don't announce defeat. They don't acknowledge loss. They withdraw and pretend it was mutual. But the behavior gives them away. They stop testing. Stop escalating. Stop hovering. Because they understand something with uncomfortable clarity. There is no countermove. The position they relied on no longer exists, and forcing it would only expose them further. This is why the strike works. Not because it was aggressive, not because it was clever, but because it removed their ability to defend themselves at all. In the next chapter, we'll break down what happens in the silence after this retreat, and why watching them realize that it's over is the most satisfying part of the entire process. When the manipulator realizes there's nothing left to push against, the silence becomes unbearable. This is the phase they never prepare for. They expect backlash. They expect confrontation. They expect fallout they can manage. What they get instead is nothing. No reaction to measure. No emotion to exploit. No door left ajar. Silence isn't neutral to a manipulator. It's hostile. Because without feedback, they lose orientation. They replay every interaction, searching for the moment things turned. They dissect tone, timing, wording. They wonder if this was planned long before they noticed. And the worst part is they can't verify any of it. Silence creates unanswered questions, and unanswered questions rot in the mind. Did they miscalculate you? Did you see something they missed? Do you know more than you ever said? The manipulator starts imagining threats that don't exist. Contingencies that were never planned. Cards you may or may not be holding. That uncertainty is devastating, because manipulation relies on certainty. Knowing how people respond, knowing which levers move which emotions. Silence removes the map. They try to stabilize themselves by reaching for meaning elsewhere. Talking to others, reframing the story, convincing themselves it was mutual. But the silence remains unchanged. No correction, no validation, no relief. This is when the humiliation becomes internalized. They realize the strike wasn't emotional. It wasn't impulsive. It wasn't reactive. It was final. They weren't important enough to deserve explanation. They weren't dangerous enough to require defense. They weren't relevant enough to stay in the game. That realization lands slowly, then all at once. And once it does, something shifts permanently. They stop reaching out. Stop testing. Stop circling. Because any further move would only confirm what they already know. The silence wasn't a tactic. It was the ending. In the next chapter, we'll break down what it looks like when they finally realize it's over, and why that moment comes too late for them to change anything. When a manipulator finally understands there's no way back, the shift is unmistakable. It doesn't arrive as a confession. It doesn't come with accountability. It shows up as resignation. They stop testing your boundaries because they've learned where they end. They stop manufacturing reasons to reach out because they know nothing will come back. They stop circling because circling only exposes how little ground they have left. This is the moment regret becomes real. Not regret for what they did, regret for misjudging who they were dealing with. You can see it in how they move afterward. They're quieter, more careful, less confident in spaces where they once pushed. They avoid direct contact. Avoid your name. Avoid situations where your absence is noticeable. Because absence is the proof they can't argue with. They replay the sequence again and again, looking for a different outcome, a better angle, a move they should have made earlier. And every replay ends the same way. They escalated. You waited. They pushed. You withdrew. There was no explosion to blame, no fight to reinterpret, no argument to win later. Just a clean ending they didn't approve of. That's what embarrasses them. They weren't defeated in public. They weren't humiliated out loud. They were dismissed. And dismissal hits deeper than rejection. Rejection invites negotiation. Dismissal ends the conversation. They realize they no longer occupy any space in your decisions. No influence, no leverage, no relevance. This is where their behavior toward others changes too. They become more guarded, less bold, more cautious about who they test and how far they push. Not because they've grown, but because they remember what it felt like to lose without recourse. They carry that memory forward. You don't need to watch them suffer. You don't need acknowledgement. The fact that they now move differently around power is the confirmation. They learned the lesson they never wanted to learn. And they learned it from you. In the final chapter, we'll break down why they never try you again, and how this ending becomes permanent protection, not just a single victory. When a manipulator truly regrets it, they don't come back louder. They disappear. That's the final proof. Manipulators only return where they believe leverage still exists. They revisit dynamics that feel unfinished. They test doors they think might reopen. They don't try twice where they've been cut off cleanly. By now they understand something they can't undo. They didn't just lose access to you. They lost confidence in themselves. They know exactly where it went wrong. Not in the strike. Not in the silence. In the moment, they assumed you would tolerate it. That miscalculation stays with them. Every future interaction is now filtered through hesitation. Every push is reconsidered. Every escalation feels risky, because somewhere in the back of their mind is the memory of what happened when they pushed too far with the wrong person. They remember how quiet it got, how fast the position disappeared, how there was nothing to argue with and no way back in. They don't want to relive that. So they don't approach you again, not out of respect, out of self-preservation. They've learned that you don't warn, you don't negotiate, you don't explain, you observe, you wait. You end things once. That reputation spreads quietly, not through gossip, through absence. People notice who you no longer engage with. They notice who no longer tests you. They notice the way situations around you resolve without drama. And manipulators notice too. They recognize the pattern they can't survive. This is why making a manipulator regret it doesn't require cruelty. It requires finality. You didn't embarrass them publicly. You didn't seek revenge. You didn't chase validation. You simply removed yourself from their reach and never returned. That's the kind of consequence they can't adapt to. That's the kind of ending they remember. And that's why they never try you again.